Everyone, how's it going? It's Thomas back at you with another video. And today I want to cover this article by USA Today. It's a little bit of old news, but it's still very relevant. And it involves credit scores and the not decision, but the possible decision of the US government to change the credit score industry and more specifically, the way that your credit is scored. So essentially what's entailed here is the US government has more or less decided that they think that there needs to be some reform to the way credit scores work for the reasons that there is a majority of Americans who either do not have a credit score or have a very low credit score. Whether or not this is their fault is, that's to be determined. However, there is just a majority of Americans that don't think too much about their credit score, and the majority of Americans do not have a credit card. And so as a result, they don't have a credit score, and this has caused them to essentially be denied loans, which they may or may not have been able to pay back. And the problem really goes into there are plenty of Americans who have good standing bank accounts, who have good standing cash flow, but are getting denied mortgages because they don't have the credit score to back up their payment history. And so even though they have money in their bank accounts, they are not eligible for these loans because the credit industry has not given them the score to prove that they are. And it's true of the other side as well. There are people who do not have good standing bank accounts, but have good credit scores and are being approved for loans. And so it's kind of a situation where the government is seeing that there are people who should be eligible for loans, which are being denied them. And it is because of this that they're wanting to somewhat reform the system. And so they're kind of going through some ideas of what they could possibly implement. Now, this is technically being implemented by several companies already. The one that comes to mind most specifically is with the Visa Petal card, they do not look at your credit score, they look rather at your cash flow when factoring in what your credit limit is going to be and if they will approve you. This is essentially when they look at your income to spending ratio and then determine if you are credit worthy. But I have a whole video on credit cards that you guys should check out if you want to know more about that card specifically. And also I have a video about the current factors in your credit score. So if you want to know more about what affects your credit score right now, I will also include that as a link in this video. But as of right now, what they're looking to change, and obviously there are multiple lists and there are numerous things, but the ones they're looking to implement right now are listed here. And those are prohibiting the use of credit score information for purposes unrelated to credit decisions. This means that employers can no longer screen your credit report as far as getting hired, because there are places that people apply to that require a decent credit score to be hired onto, and they're wanting this to be removed. They do not want this to be a factor. The next thing is reducing the amount of time negative information remains on your credit report. So the item that they include here, it says that information like missed payments and collections would fall to 4 years rather than 7, and bankruptcies would stay on for 7 years still. So missing your payment, factors that are not necessarily massive, I guess, in size, such as a bankruptcy would stay on, but if you miss your credit payment 1 month, if you pay 11 out of 12 months on time, that one time would not be as detrimental as it is right now. The other two things relate to medical expenses, and they do not want credit bureaus to report medical debt for medical necessary services or report unpaid medical bills for 1 year to give time for resolving those things, as well as costs incurred from COVID-19 related illnesses. So essentially a very heavy emphasis on how medical bills will be implemented into your credit score, as well as the amount of time that these payments and these various factors will stay on your report. And this is technically implemented by several companies. As I said before, the Visa Petal card, the Visa Petal 1 and the Petal 2 both use this method. And I believe Chase is also implementing this in some ways. I have yet to research that in its entirety. But that being said, there is something to think about when we look at the current system of credit. Now, this is all my opinion here, and I'm going to try to keep this brief for you guys. But essentially, how I see this is I believe there is an issue with people who should be approved for credit or not because they never got a credit card, whether that was a personal choice or whether they just couldn't get it. But there are ways to get credit cards if you have poor or low credit. And I think that it's kind of a poor choice on the government's part. I don't trust the government to make any sort of credit decisions. When you're $27 trillion in debt, I don't think the government should be loaned any sort of money in that sense. So I don't know if they're the ones who should be deciding credibility of individuals. And let's not forget, we went into a financial crisis because people who were not approved in a technical standing were approved to take out loans, which they should have never had. And people were given money that they should have never had because it was super easy to just walk away from it. It was easy to not pay it off. And that's a problem which took years to recover from. And still to this day, there's still factors of that that are still affecting people in their daily lives. And so, I mean, as far as the changing of the system, I sympathize with people who do not have credit history, even though they should, or because they just were denied for various reasons. And I understand the problem there. But here's what I will say to that. I got a credit card when I turned 18 because I understood the importance of having a credit score. And as a result of that, I got better rates on my student loans. I got better rates for my car. I have a perfect credit score now. And that, not a perfect credit score, but I'm in the excellent rating because I took the necessary steps. And I think that there's something to be said about, okay, yes, there are people who have credit cards who have perfect credit, but who don't have good standing bank accounts. And I think we should factor in when we're taking on such topics as mortgages, there should be something to be factored with your spending to income ratio. But at the end of the day, if you make the payment, you make the payment. And I think that the idea that we're going to remove specific items such as missed payments from factoring into a credit score is a huge mistake. That is the biggest impact of your credit score, is making your payments on time. Why would you loan money to someone who will not pay it back? That makes no sense in my mind. That's the whole point of credit. Now, I agree that you should not be denied a job because of your credit score, and that certain medical bills, we can look at the variables in there and see if it's necessary to include them in your report. I think the medical system we have in place here in the US is kind of an atrocity, and it's a very difficult situation, no doubt. But to remove payments altogether, I think is ridiculous because either you pay your bills on time or you don't. And I don't know why that is such a up for discussion sort of debate. But I think including other elements into your credit score could be a good idea. I think that cash flow should be considered. Because if you're going to think, okay, this person pays their bills on time, but how much is it costing them to pay their bills? Because then you can implement, okay, they make this much money and they spend this much money, so we can guarantee that they will continually pay. I think it's a good idea, but I think that the idea that we need to get rid of the existing credit score system doesn't make a lot of sense. There are plenty of ways to get a credit card if you do not have credit or excellent credit. It's just that you have to be willing to start at the bottom. You have to be willing to get a secured card. You have to be willing to get a cash flow card. You have to be willing to sacrifice perks in order to get something better. It's kind of like working at a minimum wage job throughout college or whatever line of work you're in order to get to that next place. It's not great at the time, but it gets to something better. And I don't think making it easier for people to borrow money is necessarily a good idea, especially when history is saying don't do that. If one of the greatest recessions in our time was a result of the wrong people having money because they were not approved by all means, I don't see any reason to revisit that idea. It makes no sense to me. But anyways, that's kind of my whole take on this. Obviously, I went a little bit longer than I anticipated. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, whether or not you think that the credit score system needs to be reformed, whether it needs to be changed, maybe need some additions, take some stuff off of it. I'd love to hear all your thoughts. And as always, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe for future content. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a future video, and I will see all of you guys again in the next video.